Welcome to the office hours for week 8 for COIS FRSC 2750, Computer Crime and Forensics. Thanks for coming out. I have a few things, as usual, that I want to go over. I'm going to start off with an apology for those of you that were writing at the normal time, the delay in getting the exam started. I hope you dealt with that stress all right. It was entirely my fault, so we started 5 minutes late or whatever. As I said in the announcement, there's no issue with late on the exam. It just means that you finished up after the due date that I'd set as being noon on that Monday. So there's no marks deducted or anything silly like that with the exam. I have to, or I want to put a due date in for people to be able to see in their calendars and everything. And if it comes in a minute or second for that matter, after that, it marks it as late just automatically. So in the case of discussions and quizzes and things like that, that is a hard due date like timeline, but certainly not for the exam. In fact, when I opened the exam from 10 till 12, which was the standard, you could have gone in at 5 to 12 and still had your full amount of time to write that, your full 2 hours. The problem is once you get past, if you were disconnected or if you logged off or whatever happened, you wouldn't be able to get back in. So you always get your 2 hours and then it auto submits after that 2 hour period. So there's no real such thing as a late. So just to address that, I addressed it in an announcement, but just to kind of go over that and flesh that out a little bit. So I always recommend, it's the same probably with every professor for exams. If they have a specific set time, I always recommend starting on time, which unfortunately wasn't exactly available this time, but starting on time so that if you did get disconnected, if you had to move from one computer to another or whatever, you would still get your full allotted time there. So we are working away on getting that marked. We will have those marks to you no later than Wednesday of next week, and you'll get those marks at that time, and that ties into something I'm going to talk about later, which is the course drop. Back on track. I'll take probably no more than 30 seconds and say if you're live and you have questions about this, I'm happy to talk to you about the requirements. So the 2 mandatory requirements in order to be able to see the quizzes. If you're watching this as a video afterwards, a recording afterwards, please go back to any of the other office hours, particularly the first and the second office hours, and I explain about that in great detail. If you still can't see the quizzes, you need to watch the first and or second office hours and figure out what's going on. And we'll tie that in also to the fact that if you've got to that point, you're probably going to want to look closely at the drop date as well. The final exam, this was announced. You can see that it says that the final exam is Thursday, April 20th at 7 p.m. It says beside that, the gym. So that's by default. That's just the way it is in my Trent. That's not going to change, even if we're going to talk next about some choices that you get to make as to where you want to write it. So if you chose to write it in Durham, it's not going to change in your My Trent announcement in the top right corner at the homepage of My Trent, okay? Don't worry about that. It's not customized. It's just by default that it says the location's gym, okay? So do keep that day in mind, please, guys. Thursday, April the 20th at 7 p.m. We don't accommodate travel and holidays or just about anything else for the final exam. You're expected to keep your final exam period open to write final exams. However, you do have some flexibility. If you wish, you can write it online in the proctored online format. Again, I'm going to talk about this in a second. And that'll give you a little bit of flexibility. So you could write it from anywhere in the world. Even if you're fortunate enough that you're on vacation somewhere, you could take the 3 hours and write it from wherever, if you choose to do that. So you all received an email. I'm just pulling it up here so that I'm looking at it. It came out on Friday, February 24th at 3:10 p.m. Local time, Peterborough time. And it said, I'm not going to read the whole thing, obviously, but it would have been addressed to you. It would say, good afternoon. We are writing to inform you that your online course, COIS2750 and so on, has a proctored final exam. It is your responsibility to select the location of where you'd like to write the exam by no later than March 9th at 4 p.m. Okay, so that is a week from Thursday at 4 p.m. You need to make that choice. I'm going to go ahead and encourage all of you guys, if you haven't done it when you're either live watching this or if you're watching the recording of this, do it immediately. Okay, if you do not declare one of the 3 locations, so your 3 possibilities are Peterborough, Durham, and online proctored exam. Okay, they're all proctored, so you've got Peterborough, Durham, or online. If you do not make a declaration by Thursday, March 9th at 4 p.m., you will be writing it in Peterborough. I recognize fully that there are people that are living all over the world that are attending this course. Take the time to choose that online option. Otherwise, we will see you in Peterborough. I am not going to be intervening on your behalf if you don't do what is required of you, which is to declare which location you want to write. Okay, so do that by a week from Thursday. Sooner is definitely better. Every year I get someone, often the day before the exam, saying, "Sir, I live in France, and it says here I got to write in Peterborough. I can't do that. I want to do it online." And I just shrug. That's really unfortunate, but you got to do your part. Okay, so please do your part. Declare where you're going to do it. So let's talk a little bit about the online choice. The way the online will work, we use a service called Examity. Some of you are familiar with this, but I'll assume that you're not, and kind of go over it. Examity is a proctoring service where you'll log into Examity. You'll have to create an account. You'll have to set an appointment. Once you make that choice, once you choose to write online, then you're going to go into a process where you're going to have to create an Examity account if you don't already have one, and you're going to have to make an appointment to write your exam. The range of times for the exam will start at the period when we're all writing, or the general period where people are writing in Peterborough and Durham live. So that's Thursday, April 20th at 7 p.m. and it'll go for the next 24 hours. Okay, so you'll be able to choose those. You'll be able to choose your time slot suitable to wherever you are or whatever you've got going on. Okay, if you don't make that appointment with Examity, same situation. You haven't done your part, and I don't have any direct contact with Examity. I can't reach out to Examity. They are a service that are employed by the university, and it's IT that interfaces with them, not me. So I can't intervene, and I wouldn't intervene. If you don't do what you're asked to do, I'm not going to waste my time intervening on your behalf. Okay, just to be clear, I always, as you guys know, like to be clear in the expectations. So yeah, so if you don't do anything, see you in Peterborough, and that's fine. Many of you are going to write in Peterborough. My advice, for what it's worth, is if you have a choice, if you are local, I strongly recommend that you write it in person. And I say that because if you write it online, you're responsible for good internet, a good computer, and a microphone and a webcam. You have to have a webcam and a microphone in order to write with Examity. There's no exception to that whatsoever. Obviously, you need a good computer or some sort of computational device that doesn't break down in the middle of it. There's no accommodation for the student who is writing on Examity and their computer crashes. That is not the school or my problem. So you need to have good equipment. I always recommend that people have a backup internet. Internet is going to be the weakest link likely in that scenario. So you need to have a phone with some data. You need to have an alternate internet, whether that's go to another location, rush to another location in the middle of the exam or whatever. So there are real risks in writing it online, and you need to mitigate those as best you can, because there is no saving grace from the school that internet went out, that your battery died, that your computer died, that your webcam, you can't afford a webcam, or you didn't have a webcam. None of those things are accommodatable, if that's a word. Okay. So if you're going to write it with Examity online, you need a webcam, you need a microphone, you need a good computer, and you need a solid internet, or options with internet as well. Okay, just trying to set that. So that's why I recommend, if you have a choice, come and write in Peterborough, come and write in Durham, and then if the lights go out in Durham while 20 students are there writing, I can accommodate that. I'm there. I know what's going on. The lights went out. We wait until the lights come back on, or we do whatever emergency procedures are required, and then we resume the exam whenever we can. Okay. So if it's on Trent property, we can and will accommodate you. Nothing like that, fingers crossed, has ever happened, but it could in theory. Okay. So I talked about this with my other class, and someone asked what the form of the exam was going to be, whether you needed an electronic device. If you're writing in person, it's a pencil and pen and paper type of exam. So there'll be some combination of multiple choice, multiple answer, true, false, that you'll do the Scantron, you'll fill in the dots, plus some short answer stuff. I will, as we get closer, go in much greater detail about what the exam is going to look like. That's not for right now. I'm just encouraging you to make a choice as to location for the exam. So we're in week 8 in our course, and you guys, presumably most of you have already written, most if not all of you have written the midterm at this point. There's nothing else left to do for this week. 55% of people have chosen their term paper topic. If you're not in that 55%, I suggest you make a decision and get writing. Okay. If you have extra time, maybe you're devoting the rest of your week to other courses or whatever, it is due, the term paper. Bear with me. The term paper is due Friday, March 24th at 11:59:00 p.m. So we're not really that far away, right? We are only looking at sorry, pulling up my calendar here. Not sure. So as of tomorrow, we're only 1, 2, 3 weeks away for that term paper, and you want to write that term paper, and you need to revise it. Don't send me the first draft. It'll get marked like a first draft does. So I would suggest making some time and getting that working. That term paper is worth 15%. It's a significant portion of your mark. So please do get started on that. If you don't know how to sign up for that, I believe it was the last office hours that I went through that in great detail. If you're here with me live, I'm happy to answer your question on that, so I can go over the process again if someone asks me here. Otherwise, if you're watching this as a recording, please go back to the previous week's office hours. And it's 2 weeks ago, because we had reading week, of course, last week. All right. Double checking, the exam will be available for the next 24 hours. Yes. I was planning to go in person in Peterborough, but I have another exam on Wednesday. So that means I can have a day in the middle to study if you choose online. Yes, almost a full day. Yep, absolutely. That's exactly right. So you could, now my recommendation, the slots in Examity fill up quickly. So I would go through the process of choosing the online. And then once you are contacted with next steps, or it may even be in the email instructions there. Go through that and choose your time slot as soon as possible. Because I mean, it would kind of suck if you ended up doing Examity and you ended up at the same time because you couldn't choose a different slot, right? So, but yes, you can stretch it out almost 24 hours, 24 hours less a minute are your options there. Okay. That's just a good option for someone that's traveling or someone that wants to control the pace of their exams or whatever, but do be aware that you're taking on some level of risk when you do that. Okay. Okay. So like I said, we're in week 8. Grab term paper topic if you haven't already, and get working on that would be my advice. Week 9, we kind of get back into the swing of things around here where we are working on chapter 6. We've got a quiz and we've got the second discussion post for discussion 3. Remember to look at your feedback. You probably already have for your first 2 discussions. We gave very verbose feedback for those discussions. We will not be doing that for the next discussions. It'll be just marks. Again, that's just based on experience. I've said this before, but we find that if students don't read the first 2 feedback, they're not going to read the 3rd or the 4th or the 5th. So we don't waste our time. It takes an awful lot of time to mark each one and give personalized feedback by person. Yeah, so just to jump back to answering a question here, the email doesn't say the timing actually. No, I know that. I just know that that's when it will be offered for Examity. It won't start any earlier than my in-person exam, and it'll run up to 24 hours after that. Okay, that's the way it's been every year that we've done this. I don't suspect that's changing. Okay. All right. And we just have a problem that you can't cram all the people in at the exact same time. They just don't have enough proctors available, right? We're not the only people that, like Trent is not the only people that are using this service, obviously. So we do, it is spread out for sure. Okay. So then the other thing, and I'm just looking through my list of things that I wanted to talk about, is what I call drop date, more formally called course withdrawal date. I want to bring that to everyone's attention. The course withdrawal date is Friday, March 10th. By that time, you will have 37.5% of your marks available to you. I'm bringing it up now. I know we've got another office hours before then. I'm bringing it up now because this should involve a bit of reflection and maybe a consultation with an academic advisor. If things aren't going well, you may want to pull the chute and get out of this course. That's a perfectly legitimate strategy. This course will be offered in the summer. It'll actually be offered by Professor Brian Hercock. It'll be a slightly different course. It'll be actually a radically different course, but it's the same credit and everything. I'll also be offering this again next year, or maybe it's just not for you for whatever reason. I'm not encouraging anyone to drop. I'm encouraging everyone to think about it. There is no benefit in getting a 40% on your transcript. It's much better to withdraw. So if you withdraw by the Friday, March 10th deadline, it does not, your marks in the course and your, the fact that you were in the course does not show on your transcript. Okay. If you continue beyond that period and, don't do well or don't do anything further, you will get that mark and it will show on your transcript, which presumably will be incorporated into your average. So I strongly advise talking to an academic advisor. They can make that strategic decision with you or give you advice on what they think you should do. Okay. Don't leave that to the last minute for the same reason. The academic advisors are going to be very strapped for time. And if you leave it to next Thursday to talk to someone to get their advice, there's a real good chance that they're not going to be able to talk to you. There's going to be 100 people lined up before you. Okay. So do consider that. Remember that when you look at your grades in Blackboard, If you didn't submit something, it doesn't change the denominator. Okay, so what I mean by that is if, let's say we had three tests out of 10 marks, so we had, and you wrote 2 of them, and you got perfect. Let's say you got 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, and then you didn't write the next one. So what you've got is 20 out of 30. But what the grades in Blackboard, because you didn't do anything for the third one, unless we put in a 0 for you, it'll just show you as 20 out of 20. So remember that. If you haven't submitted something, and we haven't set the mark to 0 for you, and by default, we don't do that. We just leave it. There's just way too many people to be putting zeros in for everyone that doesn't write something. Know that, when you're looking at this coming up next, after next Wednesday, once we've released your midterm marks, your mark is going to be out of 37.5, despite whatever it may say. Okay, so just keep that in mind. The way all my classes work is that the mark that you see is the mark towards your final. So if you see a 15, you've got 15% towards your final. If you did nothing else, you'd end up with a 15%. Okay. I think that's all that I wanted to talk about. I'm just quickly looking through. We will talk about the final exam a little later on, once we get closer, for sure. And I think I've covered everything else. I saw a question. Do you have any tips for answering choose all that apply questions? So that's your multiple answer questions. I don't, other than to say that I would consider each line and compare it against the text. Everything in the questions in the multiple answer, multiple choice is handwritten by me, and I took it directly out of the text. Okay, so if you're diligent about it, you will see. Sometimes people are rushing. Sometimes people leave it to the last minute, and then they're kind of skim reading. If you actually read the sentences that pertain, and they'll be right beside each other, it'll be all in the same paragraph or very close together, then you will be able to decide which ones are correct. Sometimes my choose all that apply can be just 1. It can never be 0, but it can be 1 and up to all of them. Okay, so I'm not afraid to make it. Maybe some people, if there's 4 or 5 choices, they do 2 or 3 all the time. I don't. I go from 1 right up to the 4 or 5 limit. The exam will have some multiple choice, multiple answer, maybe true, false, like the ones you're seeing in your quiz, and it will have short answers as well. So there'll be I call them essay questions, but it's not really an essay because I encourage you to do it in point form. There'll be some short answer questions for you as well. Okay, but we'll delve into that as we get a little closer. Okay. Any other questions that I can address? Okay, guys, if there are no other questions and you're satisfied with what you've heard so far, feel free to get on with your evening. Thanks for spending a half an hour with me. I really find this to be helpful for the class. It's helpful for the recording to have people asking questions and interacting. So thank you very much. Get on with your evening. I will talk to you guys in another week. Thank you.